Ho, ho, ho. I'm Jack London, and that's the current local version of the Call of the Wild. In this fine year of 1910, I'm staying in Carmel over at the home of my friend, the poet George Sterling at 10th and Torres. And over there, just the other day, I finished my credo. I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. To us that are here, and you that are there, and the rest of us everywhere. Good old John Barleycorn, so much more than just a breakfast drink. The first bit of time I used around this fine peninsula and up in that fine, soft Carmel Valley was a few years ago. It was November 1906. I came down here celebrating my first anniversary with my second and better wife. And the publication of my 16th or so book, White Fang. My friends call that one The Call of the Tamed. We rode the train from Oakland down to Monterey. We were met by the Carmel stagecoach. And the stagecoach pulled us up over the hill and then down along what they call Ocean Avenue in Carmel. It was more like a toboggan slide made out of mud. We slid down to the bottom of there, and then I saw for the first time in my life that magnificent Carmel Bay with Point Lobos at the south, Pescadero Point at the north. There's peacock blue breakers coming in on the white sand and the white sand dunes. And the Carmel Bohemian Art Colony gave us a greeting. Now, back in 1906, there were only about 30 families living around Carmel. And about half of these were artistes of one sort or another, and they put on a pretty good welcoming party. It was a 5-day welcoming party. And the first day was a picnic down on the Carmel beach. And after a few hours down there, my wife, Charmian, appeared to be hypnotized, watching these peacock blue breakers rise up, fold over, and slide up on the white sand. And she looked over at me after a while and said, "Jack, one day in Carmel is better than 10,000 years in Oakland." Some of the best parts of this welcoming party were down near the mouth of the Carmel River at a place called Stewart Cove there, right next to Carmel Point. Now, in 1906, Carmel Point didn't have a house or a tree on it. In fact, it was called Mission Point. And we'd get out on the rocks at low tide there to get what we wanted for our picnic dinner, the abalone. Now, this is not a dinner-sized abalone. I ate this little feller for breakfast. But he demonstrates nicely why the abalone is called, in Latin, Haliotus rufescens, which means a red ear-shaped thing. Now, the abalone is a mollusk. It has one shell on the top, one foot on the bottom. The foot is usually on a rock under the water. The abalone is faster than you might expect. He'll gallop along about 15 feet per minute. So in 4 seconds, he'll travel 1 foot. So some of us can catch him. Now you get your abalone off the rock in a hurry. We were getting big ones, 4 times bigger than that little fella, and you cut out the foot, which is what you want to eat, but you need to tenderize it. So you find a flat surface on the beach, the top of a tree stump or a rock with a flat surface, and you bust up the muscle fibers with a rock or with a wooden mallet. Now, my friend George Sterling's the man who's been teaching us this fine art, and he prefers to tenderize abalone while drinking Zinfandel or Muscatel, any wine that rhymes with Carmel. Now, George practices other arts, too. One young lady said, George Sterling has a profile like an ancient Greek coin, run over by a Roman chariot. But you get your abalone down there and start, oh, some folks boast of quail on toast because they think it's Tony, but I'm content to owe my rent and live on abalone. Some stick to biz, some flirt with Liz down on the sands of Coney, but we by hell stay in Carmel and whang the abalone. In case you get a tough one, there are 65 verses to that little song. And my wife made up one just the other day. She said, some live on hope, and some on dope, and some on alimony. But my tomcat, he lives on fat and tender abalone. Well, I've been having a lot of fun over in Carmel at Stewart Cove and Carmel Beach with my friends there, Mary Austin, the great Jimmy Hopper, former captain of the University of California football team, a marvelous writer of short stories who lives on Scenic there. Mary Austin lives at Lincoln and 4th. If you want to visit Mary Austin there in the morning, look up. She does her work up in a tree, climbs a tree early in the morning. She has a shelter up there. And that's where she wrote The Land of Little Rain, a bestseller back in 1904, I believe. And I've been having a fine time around there, but it took me a while to get started having very much fun, really. When I was born on the 12th of January in San Francisco in 1876, my family was so numbed with poverty that I was not welcome. My mother stands about this tall. Her growth was stunted when she was a little girl. And I remember hearing her speaking with a friend. I think she must have thought I was sound asleep. I was only about 3 or 4 years old, and she said to a friend, you know, little Jackie over there, he's not only my first baby, he's going to be my last. I can't see as how babies are good for anything. Well, I took that remark to heart. I was more than a baby, I was more than a toddler, and I'd show them I'd get good for something. So at the age of 4, I noticed that people were doing a lot of mopping in the kitchen from time to time. I watched the way the grown-ups mopped, and when they weren't there, I tried my hand at it. I thought, I can do this. I said, Mother, look at this. I'm good for something. Why, Jackie, she said, you're good for something. She started taking me around to her friend's house. Now watch little Jackie mop. My boy is good for something. I liked that feeling so well, I stayed with it. By the time I was 6 years old, I was so good with a mop, I had turned professional. I was swamping out saloons in Oakland. I loved the hours, liked the work, and the best thing was they paid you every day, every morning. Bringing that money home and putting it into the hand of my mother, and she'd look up and say, Jackie, you're a good boy. I liked that feeling so much, I got another job to bring in more money. I was delivering the San Francisco Chronicle, throwing the Chronicle, we called it, throw the Chronicle all over the neighborhood, then come on home and get my little red wagon, fill it up with potatoes. You could grow potatoes right in your own yard there in the city of Oakland, fill that wagon up, get out into the streets of Oakland, sell those potatoes as fast as I could, and then I'd hustle on home, park that little red wagon, and I'd hustle on over to the Cole Street Grammar School. Now at Cole Street Grammar School, I was studying grammar. But the main thing I was studying at Cole Street was how to work the library. They had a little dinky library there, but a very fine librarian. And this woman didn't boss us around like a lot of the other teachers. She spoke to us individually and said, what are your questions? I want to know what you want to find out. What do you want to learn? And I'll show you how to learn it in the library if you articulate your question. So once I got my question articulated, she said, this library is too small for you, Jackie. Here's a pass. You can go to the big library. You can go to the Oakland Library. So I took that pass, and I took a route to the Oakland Library that I knew would be intersected by the truant officer. And when he caught me, I said, look at this pass. He said, I got to let you go. He let me go to the Oakland Library, and I could see it in the distance and approach many steps in these huge columns in this big, heavy door. It was like stepping into a cathedral of knowledge, the hush of the place. The grown-ups intent on their work at the tables, people moving slowly among the stacks, and the sound of a book sliding out. And Ina Coolbrith, the librarian at Oakland, you may know her now better in 1910 as the poet laureate of the state of California. When I met her, I was about 8 years old. I was about this tall, and this noble woman took a liking to me and helped me, showed me how to do research. And after a while, she showed me how to take care of books, and she gave me a library card. She said, "Jackie, this library card is as good as any grown-up's. I can take a book home?" She said, "Yes." I took that first book home. I carried that book home like a new puppy. And that's what changed my life entirely, falling in love with literature. Probably the best known book I've written is The Call of the Wild. And between the time I got that first book and wrote The Call of the Wild, I'd been in gangs in Oakland. I'd been an oyster pirate. I'd been a bounty hunter, a bay sailor, an open water sailor in the fur seal trade. I'd been a hobo all over this magnificent North American continent. I'd been a convict for only 30 days out in Erie County, New York. I'd been a student for a little while at the University of California, a Klondike gold seeker. That was in 1897 and 98, but The Call of the Wild, I finished that in 1903, and here's the last paragraph of my first bestseller, The Call of the Wild. It's about Buck, as you probably know. But he is not always alone. When the long winter nights come on and the wolves follow their meat into the lower valleys, he may be seen running at the head of the pack through the pale moonlight or glimmering borealis, leaping gigantic above his fellows, his great throat a bellow, as he sings a song of the younger world, which is the song of the pack. One thing I learned along in this life is that the world is as full of brutality as the sea is full of motion. Some men are made sick by the one, some by the other. Well, I'll be heading back home in a few days or a few weeks whenever my wife, Charmian, decides it's a good time to go. We don't live here. We just come down to this beautiful place to celebrate after I've finished a book. We'll go back up to Sonoma County, up in the Valley of the Moon, up above the little village of Glen Ellen, where we have about 1,600 acres up there. And I love to saddle up after lunch and ride over my beautiful ranch. Between my legs is a beautiful horse. The air is wine. The grapes on a score of rolling hills are red with autumn flame. Across Sonoma Mountain, wisps of sea fog are stealing. The afternoon sun smolders in the drowsy sky. I have everything to make me glad I am alive. I am filled with dreams and mysteries. Ho, ho, ho.